everybody, welcome back. I'm Kate Rebel. This is Kate Rebel's Realm, and I wanted to do this little special video for you guys. It isn't much, but I wanted to kind of capsulize all of the stories that I had read for you. I have a pen, and I'm here today to do a top 10 of my favorite stories, and I was going to do top 5, and then I had a little bit of an issue and I couldn't just do 5. I had to do 10 plus honorable mentions, so I am so sorry, but we are about to roll in here hot and heavy. Some of them might be shocking, probably not, because I yapped a lot about the ones that I liked a lot. So yeah, and I think maybe I'll do a video with my favorite heroes as well. I don't know why I'm moving like this, like I'm, it won't stop, you guys. I can't stop doing it. What kind of dance is this? And I'm gonna start off with the honorable mentions because I feel like that makes the most sense. So I know that I'm missing a lot of different heroes and a bunch of amazing stories, and I have a connection with so many of them. Very sad about some of the ones that I left out. Even in honorable mentions, I only wanted to put 5 in there, which I think is too many, but I couldn't. I couldn't sum it down, and I wanted to share all of it with you guys. I'm going to start off with an honorable mention, which is going to seem maybe a little bit silly to you guys, because it's 2 different heroes. That being Dahlia and Morrigan. Because both of their stories connected so well, they just completed each other. I liked everything about the Nordshire cemetery and that they created this place for people that needed it, and it was all because of this rose that they had in the middle of the cemetery, and it was just beautiful, and a lot of people were scared of them. They were deemed witches and evil, but they were doing it for the greater good for their community, and I really liked both of their stories, so that's a little bit of an honorable mention for them. Another honorable mention is Zillatu. I had a lot of fun with her and all of the other hero stories that connected with her, and her demon spawn, and her whole sad story about the death of her love and just becoming a complete tyrant after that. I really wanted to give an honorable mention to Torodor. I really loved his story. His lady who got bit by a vampire, and then he went, well, bite me so we can live on together forever, but she did, and he turned into a complete a-hole, and she was so miserable that she jumped off a cliff. And Leia, I really wanted to put Leia in my top 10, but she just didn't quite make it in there, about attuning herself to her harp, her soul bound to it to heal people through music. I loved that one, but it just didn't quite make it into my top 10. Last but not least, for my honorable mentions, I have Captain Reeve. I know I'm adding a lot of honorable mentions, but I just couldn't quite leave these ones out. I loved his story about how he was presumed dead, and he went back to his wife, and she was told that he died, and she went with another man, and he freaked out, killed them both, and then jumped off of a boat himself with his anchor, and now he's a little ghost man. I really liked that story too, so I couldn't leave it out. So thank you for putting up with my honorable mentions. I couldn't help it. I loved those stories so much, and I just couldn't condense this. Number 10, Deimos. Now that being said, it is a shorter one, but I love this story, and I love Deimos and Nyx, and I thought that out of the 2 stories, I felt like Deimos's captured the essence of it all more than Nyx's did. Probably one of the most memorable hero tie-ups that I read about. My favorite, I would say, probably, is Deimos and Nyx. And he basically said no to all the blood hunters and said, I don't want to kill vampires, we should team up. And he fell in love with Nyx, and she fell in love with him, and now they're on their own path to try and make things good with the werewolves and the vampires, because they're in a big feud right now. And I love it. And I don't care what anyone says. I think it's cute. So I'm going to put that at my number 10 spot because it might not be as interesting to the story of Taya, but I just really like this one. And number 9, I'm putting Eona. I think this is one of the more unique stories in Watcher of Realms, and it stuck with me, and I think about it a lot. I don't have Deimos either, but I don't have Eona. I don't have Eona or Deimos, and they're only epics. And I love them, and their stories I just really, really connected to. And hers, I thought, was one of the most interesting stories. That being about how she is the Time Lord. She's Doctor Who? No. She controls time and she makes sure that people don't try to escape it. She found a man that locked himself away in a cave trying to escape his death. And she said no. And she went and she found him and she took the time that he had taken that was not his because he was supposed to die, and she sucked it from him and he just crippled into dust. He had overstayed his years on Earth. So she's kind of like the Crypt Keeper. When you see her coming, you know you're done. I don't have her, so I don't know if she's any good to play in the game, but her story, I think, is a huge weave in the story of Taya. And here is number 8, Sadie. Another hero that I don't have. All I knew was that she was the one that rolled the dice in that event. That's it. That was the only connection that I had to Sadie. And I read that story and I really liked it. That she was kind of a misfit bard, but her father was raising her as a noble and she just didn't fit in. She couldn't do it. All of the lessons and all of the etiquette and all of the dinner parties and all of those things she just didn't like, and she couldn't live up to the expectations of being a noble, of being the king's daughter or whatever he was. She ran off with a troupe and decided, I'm going to play in this band of misfits on the DL because she didn't want her dad to know. He found out and he went and found her, and he saw one of the ladies that was there performing with her, and he fancied her and demanded her. And they said absolutely not, so he had them slain, her and her husband, which ended up being Hex's parents. And then Hex was mad. He goes, kills her dad, tries to get her too. But I did like that Hex was involved in that, and it describes why Hex is the way he is, because those were his adopted parents, because his original parents were also slain. So he got parents times 2 slain, and that sucks. But yeah, I really, really like this story, and it stuck with me, and I thought I had to keep it in here. This one's number 8. I have number 7, Aylin. I'm picking Aylin. And funny enough, I really wanted her, and I read her story, and then I ended up pulling her. And she is amazing. She is one of my best healers. But that being said, I didn't have her when I first read this story. I find her story extremely beautiful. I got goosebumps when I read it. It's about this couple who can't conceive, they can't have a baby, and they've been trying, and then this seemingly angelic child falls from the sky, that being Aylin, an alien, basically, if you will, falls from the sky, and they raise her and they dye her hair to make sure that no one knows her race, because they don't want people to know that she's one of the children of the moon. Is that what it was? Something like that. Moon Seraph, yeah. She's an angel of the moon, that being said, an alien, and they were told to be exterminated in this town, and they didn't want that, so they were dyeing her hair, and she always felt such a kindred spirit to the moon, and she wanted more, and she would just be looking up at the moon, and she felt like she didn't belong there. And finally, when she was a little bit older, her parents told her, and she freaked out and said, ain't no shot, I'm leaving, and she left. And then they got hurt, they were attacked. But she came back just in time, and she cried over their dying bodies. But her tears brought them back to life. And then she realized that those were her real parents. That's her family, not from the moon. And yes, of course, she still went back to the moon because that's where her people were. But she realized that those are her parents because they raised her and they loved her. And they did everything that they could to protect her, even if she didn't realize it right away. And I like that because a lot of the heroes in this game, when somebody did something like that to them, which they raised them from child to adult or their whole life or whatever it might be, and they lied to them about some part of their childhood or family or parents, and then they freaked out and killed them all. No, they still raised you, they still helped you. So I really liked this specific story because she realized her wrong and went, no, this is my family. They did everything that they could to give me a good life. I love Aylin. I love her. Number 6 is Vierna. Not quite in my top 5, but pretty close. I also don't have her. Hey, shocker. That being said, I was excited for her story beforehand because of, everything to do with her and Silas and their wedding, and they're always like the two couples. It's like Vierna and Silas, lust and arrogance. I didn't know there was any sort of rift between her and Silas, which this provided that a lot happened between her and Silas. So she is very much a fighter and she wants to be out on the battlefield and winning her own wars and being powerful and independent. But they're in love and he didn't want to see her get hurt. And she wanted to take on this big dragon. He didn't want her to. So he snuck off by himself to go slay the dragon, which he did. Something bad happened. And in this story, which is kind of funny because I read Vierna's story before Silas, so I didn't know the outcome, it makes it seem like Silas sold out and said, I don't care if I ever see her again, I don't want to ever see her again, I don't love her, I don't need to see her, take my eyes, and basically sold himself to some sort of entity in the woods. But I thought, there's no way, Silas definitely wants her and loves her, this makes no sense. He got tricked. He has no eyes and no vision, and no Vierna, but she currently thinks that he doesn't love her. Just think about this story a lot, so that is why she is number 6. And number 5 might be a little bit shocking to you guys, but I think this might be one of my favorite stories in the game, and it was shocking because I literally knew nothing about this hero, and that is Torodor. All that I knew was in one of the other stories, they spoke of him. He was the one that could help save them and find their son. And I really like how this story was read. It put you in the position of the person in the story, where it was like, imagine you're in this maze and you're trying to get out, and every corner you turn is a dead end, and you hear this noise coming up behind you, and you keep trying to get away, but you can't because you're stuck in this maze, and you turn around and you see the undying bull and his flames, and he's charging towards you. And it was just kind of really cool. And I really like how the first half was in that perspective, and then it gets to his perspective of he was stuck there, that he was bound by magic in this maze to protect the Nightmare Council's main area, and he wasn't allowed to leave, and he was just stuck there to basically guard it. But it was a maze that they had put around their area, and he had to protect them. And finally he broke free and left the Nightmare Council, and he didn't want anything to do with these people. But I think that it's really funny because he's a lord of the Nightmare Council, but technically he left. I think about this story a lot, and it's unique. Coming in at number 4 is Pyros. This little freaky shaman was just a monk traveling around, and he knew of this place in the desert. There was this staff that contained souls of basically really powerful shamans and monks or whatever it was, and they buried it in the desert because they didn't want anyone to get at it. And they said, nobody go there, you'll go insane if you touch it. So we buried it so that no one will have to deal with that. But Pyros said, well, I want to be the strongest shaman. I want all of the power in the world. And he craved to be the most powerful. And he went into the desert each night and dug and dug and dug. And when morning rose, he left. And then when night fell, he went back and he dug and he dug and he dug. And he finally got the staff. He got the staff. And he went mad. I like it. I like when the smartest of heroes, of characters in anything. The most genius. Crack. Coming in at number 3, Lust. She is, in all her glory, perfection. And when she comes around again in a summoning event, you better believe I'm gonna go hard, because an A1 Lust, absolutely. But enough about that, we're here for the stories, and her story was one of the juiciest of them all. So she craves power, and she uses her seduction and her succubus thing to get power, until one man comes around named Arrogance, who is determined to have her, and not just have her, but have her, and keep her. And she's not falling for it, and she just ignores him, and she basically knows that she's just going to use him as a puppet, and he's going to follow her because he's obsessed with her like everybody else, because she's a succubus. Everybody else is obsessed with her. Awesome, great, done. She doesn't really care, until he ignores her, and he goes, actually, I'm not interested. You're not all that. You're not really that important. I'm not interested anymore. I'm over it. And that makes her extremely angry, so she decides to find a way to get him back. And she does. And basically, he realizes that he's won because she laid with him and didn't kill him, which was amazing because that's what she always does. She lures them in and then, takes their soul and energy to make herself more powerful. She didn't do that with him. And he realized that he won and he had the control over her because, wow, she didn't kill me. But then he woke up the next day and he was chained to a volcano because she wasn't gonna let him go. Yeah, she let him live, but she couldn't let him go. She's gonna keep him like a little chained up doggy. I love this story. That's why she's number 3. And number 2, another hero that I do not have, Lucius. Now, I think Lucius is a very dynamic hero in the game, and he might be a little bit hard to understand how to play with at first. Okay, Lucius is number 2. I think this is one of the best stories. I think it's genius. It's giving Clint Eastwood. It's giving Lone Wanderer, Lone Ranger. I really like stories about fighting inner demons, and that's literally his whole shtick. And so he went out to the desert, and he just wanders around, and he's fighting his demons, and people hope that since they haven't seen him around, that maybe he's found his faith and he's found God and that he's a better man. But when people actually see him and they lock eyes with him, they can see the fire and the demons spinning in his eyes. Obviously, my top 10 I would love to watch in a movie. I think that they would all have great movies. But Lucius is definitely like a really good 70s, 80s action adventure, but story driven and character driven and just like juicy. And you just watch him crack and watch his downfall, but then just see how tough he is and how he just keeps going and he keeps fighting his demons. But sometimes the demons win. Sometimes the demons win and then he goes nuts. And that's okay sometimes. And last but not least, my number 1 story ever that I've read in this game. Who could it be? Who could it be? I bet you guys already know. And when I first started this, I didn't have her, and I just pulled her yesterday, and that's Hollow. I think she has the best story in the game. And I'm not even going to go over this story with you guys. I'm just going to read her story today because I want to. So I'm going to read it again because she's my number 1 story in Watcher of Realms. Deep within a lantern, Hollow's body isn't real, but her conviction is. A survivor of a villainous cult's attempted sacrifice, Hollow was abducted as a child for her prodigious magical talents. Over long, brutal years, they prepared her for tribute, carving runes into her skin and branding her with enchantments. They knew Hollow would survive because of her unrivaled healing mastery. The more they harmed her, the more she healed herself, so that they could harm her again. And she complied, because if Hollow believed in anything, it was destiny. They told her this was her destiny. They couldn't be wrong. Finally, the day came and the cultists carried out their ritual. They forced Hollow's whole body through interdimensional travel as a sacrifice to their demonic god. The travel was arduous, nearly splitting Hollow's mind and body apart. But for every wound, again, Hollow healed herself. In the fabric between dimensions, Hollow glimpsed timelines past and yet to come, all of the world she knew being eviscerated by unfathomable apocalypses, blood and death, hell fiends and horrors. Was this humanity's destiny? They came face to face with the cult's demonic god. The god grinned with a mouthful of too many teeth and mocked her for her naivety. There was no such thing as fate. Destiny is a pretty lie for naive souls. Hollow's world was uprooted beneath her feet. Everything she believed in was false. Now she has faced death before her, no more than a pawn in a scheme. No, she wouldn't die to a lie. For the first time in her life, Hollow rebelled. Be it out of spite or stubbornness, Hollow would prove that destiny could be shattered, both for her and the world. Hollow rewrote the spells on her body, carving fresh runes into her skin to change her course. She'd be sent back home at any cost. And there was a cost. The demonic god lashed out at her, expecting she'd be his meal. She was torn apart as she was hurled back into the physical realm. But Hollow kept healing herself and kept her soul alive. And when she finally landed in the physical plane, her detached soul landed in a simple lantern. This was who she was now, a powerful soul encased in a fragile vessel, with an unforeseen grasp on the magic that binds dimensions together. Hollow's human form is a false construct of her own creation, no more than a doll she puppets to interface with those around her. As much as she yearns to be human again, she acknowledges the sacrifice she made and doesn't regret it. When the world started to fall to corruption, she crafted a unique summoning stone, imbuing it with a majority of her magical power. With Hollow's talents, she can use the relic to summon distant, capable heroes to protect the realm. But she knows she's not a leader. That's why she has sought out the commander. After all, they've both defied their destinies of death. They can do it again, but this time for the world. This doll isn't expressive enough to give you the glare you deserve. And I just wanted to read that story again because Hollow is perfect. And she is literally one of the main heroes in Watcher of Realms. She is at your camp. She created the summoning stones that you use to get new heroes. And she is just a beacon of hope and light and a beautiful healer. And I finally have her in my team and I love her. And that is why she is number one. There is not a more interesting or more exciting or more beautiful and powerful healer or hero in the game. So thank you for watching. This has been my top 10 hero stories in Watcher of Realms. And I hope you enjoyed. And yes, there will be more stories to come and more lore to come when new heroes come about. But until next time, I am Kate Rebel, and this is Kate Rebel's Realm. And I will see you guys next time. Isn't this great? Are you having fun yet?